also have a candle. And here we go with my lotion. Okay. And here we have it. 5, 5, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I am now beginning. So, as I mentioned, this is the disappearance case of Holly Bobo, and she was born on October 12th of 1990. She was or is an American woman, and she disappeared from her home on April 13th of 2011. During that time, her family lived in Darden, Tennessee. Again, that is Darden, Tennessee. And the last person to see her alive was her brother, and his name is Clint. And he said that he had seen her shortly before 8 a.m. on April 13th of 2011, and she was walking into the woods with a man outside of her home, and he was wearing camouflage. So let me stop and say that this case first was a disappearance case, but in September of 2014, some of Bobo's remains, well, let me say Holly, some of Holly's remains were found in Decatur County, and so therefore the police had ruled her disappearance as a noun homicide, and they said that she died from a gunshot to the back of her head. So let's get into this case. So at the time of her disappearance, Holly was 20 years old, and she was a nursing student at the University of Tennessee, at Martin Parsons Center in Parsons, and she lived with her brother and her parents in, again, Darden, Tennessee. Shortly after Holly's final phone call ended, a neighbor had heard a scream from the Bobo's residence, and the neighbor immediately called his mother. So obviously it was a child or a teen or a young adult who heard this scream, and he had called his mother to tell her that that he heard a scream coming from the Bobo's residence, and for his mom to call Karen, which is the mother's name, so Karen Bobo. So he told his mother to call Karen at work to let her know that someone is screaming in your home. During that phone call, Clint had woke up because the family's dog was barking, and he saw Holly outside with a man dressed in camouflage. His exact words are, "It appeared to be Holly kneeling down and Drew Scott." So again, Drew Scott is Holly's boyfriend. So he also said that they looked like they were knelt down, facing each other in the garage, and they were talking back and forth. He said that his sister Holly sounded very upset, and Drew was doing most of the talking, and she would answer back to certain things that he would say. He also said he couldn't make out hardly any of the words. The only words that he did make out was Holly saying, "No, why?" So Clint believed that the couple were breaking up with each other. So at that point, Karen had called home, and she had spoke to her son, Clint. So also said that the man was wearing a hat and camouflage clothing from head to toe. And he identified the pattern on the clothing as either mossy oak, breakup, or leafy wear. And he said the male had a very deep and low voice. So, extensive searches around the area was conducted, and several items belonging to Holly was found scattered throughout the town, which included her lunchbox, a receipt with her name on it, a card from school, her cell phone, and the SIM card, which was removed again from the cell phone. So early in the investigation, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation focused on a registered sex offender who had matched the witness description by Clint, and his name was Terry Britt. His home was wired tapped, and they eventually searched it during the investigation, but he was never charged. So, a total of 6 men was implicated in connection with Holly's disappearance, with the first round of arrests occurring in March of 2014, prior to them discovering Holly's remains. So Zach Adams, his brother Dylan Adams, a friend Jason Autry, were charged with aggravated kidnapping, first-degree murder, and rape. And 2 other men, Jeffrey and Mark Percy, were arrested on charges of accessory after the fact and tampering with evidence. However, charges against Percy brothers were dropped, and another man that was charged by the name of Shane Austin had committed suicide. So it's not clear what initially led the law enforcement to suspect these men, but the investigation began with the arrest of Dylan Adams on unrelated weapon charges, and then following that arrest, he told police that he witnessed Holly alive with his brother at Zach's home after she was abducted. So a search warrant stated that Dylan told authorities that on April 13, 2011, he went to Zach's residence to get his truck, and then he observed Holly sitting in a green chair in the living room wearing a pink t-shirt with Jason Wayne Autry standing just a few feet away. He also told the police that Zach was wearing camouflage shorts, black cutoff sleeve t-shirt, and a pair of green Crocs. And he said that Zach told him he had raped Holly and videotaped it. So the alleged videotape had not been found. And then later Dylan recanted the confession and said that he was coerced, but his confession had already led to the arrest of Zach Adams, Jason Autry, and Shane Austin. So many of the details in his confession was found inconsistent with evidence, and the narrative that was presented in court was very different. So in the early year 2017, transaction, and police believe that Austin had helped dispose of Holly's body. The agreement was then withdrawn after Austin was unable and was unwilling to help them locate the body. And then the district attorney released a statement saying that Austin has not been completely truthful, forthcoming, and cooperative as to any and all aspects of this investigation. In April, Austin's attorney had filed a complaint against the state asking for an immediate and permanent injunction preventing the state from charging him. Austin was later found deceased in February 2015 while in custody at the Henderson County Sheriff's Department located in Lexington, Tennessee, while being held on unrelated charges of theft and burglary. So he had committed suicide, and Austin's attorney blamed the suicide on threats of prosecution as well as a witch hunt style of investigation where they basically relied on rumors instead of evidence. So his attorney insists that he had nothing to do with the murder and that he fully cooperated with the police. So Jeff and Mark Percy. So in July of 2014, again, this is before the body was found because she was found, or parts of her remains were found in September of 2014. So again, in July of 2014, Jeffrey and Mark were arrested and charged with accessory after the fact and tampering with the evidence. They were arrested on the basis of allegations made by Jeff's former roommate, Sandra King, who had alleged that in May of 2014, Jeff showed her a part of a video showing Adams assaulting Holly, and then she was tied up and crying. She also told the police that she had watched a small clip and did not see the sexual assault. Police had arranged for King to make a recorded call to Jeff where she told him over the phone that video of Holly, if it had been you, I would have watched it. To which he replied, I know. King alleges that Percy's brother Mark shot the video. So both of the brothers denied that there was any video that existed in that nature. And Jeff denied knowing any other men who was arrested for the crime. He also said that he was not able to hear Sandra during that phone conversation and that his ex-wife's name is also Holly. Police had analyzed over 20 phones but had not found any video. So charges against both of the brothers were dropped. And the Zach Adams trial did not include any mention of involvement by the Percy brothers. agreed to help Zach Adams dispose of the body. They drilled to a spot along the Tennessee River underneath the Interstate 40 bridge with plans to cut the body so that it would not float in the water. And after they unloaded the body from the bed of the truck, they realized that Holly was still alive. So Adam shot her in the back of the head. So he feared that the noise of the gun might have attracted attention, and Adams and Autry loaded the body back into the truck, and Adams dropped Autry off. Autry testified that Adams later said that he had dumped the body near a place called Kelly Ridge. Holly's remains were found in a different location, and it is unclear how the body ended up where it was ultimately found. So the narrative of this testimony was that Austin and the Adams brothers went to Holly's residence to teach Clint how to make meth, and allegation that Clint denied. Holly came out of the home screaming and hollering, and the men then abducted her. The prosecution alleged that Austin was the man who Clint had described as walking in the woods with his sister, and he was the only one of the men who was close to the size of the man that he had described. The three men were alleged to have raped Holly in a local barn owned by the grandmother of both Austin and Autry. So 2 pieces of paper belonging to Holly, a receipt, and a note card were found on the road where Austin lived. The receipt was found 75 feet from his driveway. Prosecution also presented other pieces of circumstantial evidence linking Zach Adams to the murder, including that he drove a white truck. And again, the neighbor next to the Bobo's residence had seen a white truck driving rapidly on the morning of Holly's murder. Other witnesses also testified that Adams made statements implicating himself in Holly's disappearance. Adams' then girlfriend Rebecca Earp had testified that he said he would tie me up just like he did Holly Bobo, and nobody would ever see me again. Zach Adams also allegedly threatened his brother after his arrest that he will put him in a hole beside her if he didn't keep his mouth shut. A gun, which was a Smith & Wesson revolver, was introduced into evidence by the prosecution because a local man named Victor Dinsmore led police to the gun, claiming that Austin and Autry sold him the weapon in exchange for drugs. The gun was reportedly found underwater, and forensic tests on the weapon failed to find any DNA or fingerprints, so prosecutors weren't able to link the gun to the case with the ballistic test. So I'm trying to figure out, how did they put that into evidence? So, not saying that these people were not involved, because I definitely believe that they all had something to do with it, but if you weren't unable to get any fingerprints or DNA, anything like that from the gun, how was the state's attorney able to put this into evidence? So on September 22nd, 2017, a jury had found Zach Adams guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape. And then a day later, which would have made it September the 23rd, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole and to serve 2 consecutive terms of 25 years for both the kidnapping and rape convictions. So, John Dylan Adams, so on January 18th of 2018, he had pleaded there's a lot of information about that. So the case had attracted a high level of national media coverage, and the Discovery Channel had published an article several months after her disappearance discussing how the high levels of media coverage, some that had reported incorrect information, had ultimately hurt the investigation. So one of the examples of misinformation was that was the description of her last known movement. So early reports inaccurately reported that Holly was dragged into the woods. Clint had later clarified that Holly had in fact walked with the man wearing camouflage into the woods, either willingly or by coercion. So this had led to rumors that Clint had changed his story and then was a suspect in his sister's disappearance. So yeah, that was a lot of information. And like I said, some of her remains were not found until September 2014. So when she disappeared in 2011, 3 years had went past before they knew that she was dead. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna go into all of the specifics because it is a lot of information as far as each what do I say? Each arrest of the 6 men is a lot of information, a lot of discussions back and forth from what the lawyers, their attorneys were saying, from the state's attorney, from what another person that was involved saying that was different to what the other person. Like, it was a lot of back and forth, and it will cause a lot of confusion if I had tried to break it all down. So I'm going to leave it here. My condolences, my deepest condolences goes out to the Bobo's family. These cases are heavy. They are heavy, and your heart just goes out for them. You automatically think like, okay, if I was in this situation, what would I do? How would I react?